Reports of a chemical attack first appeared, strangely enough, at almost the precise moment the battle had ended, when the Syrian government and rebels were negotiating on how to evacuate the latter. Reports first appeared on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and spread like wildfire.
Well, my colleague Ken Delaney and I have learned today that the U.S. now has blood and urine samples from some of the victims of this attack in Syria last weekend, and that those samples, according to U.S. officials, tested positive for chemicals.
Sources, the usuals, white helmets who serve as rescuers for Islamists and Syrian rebels. Also, the somewhat less known Syrian-American Medical Society, SAMS. Together with the white helmets, they were cited by the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, virtually every Western media outlet reporting on this chemical attack.
On Saturday, April 7th, amidst continuous bombardment of residential neighborhoods in the city of Douma, more than 500 cases, the majority of whom are women and children, were brought to local medical centers with symptoms indicative of exposure to a chemical agent.
SAMS itself is funded by U.S. aid, $6 million in 2015. U.S. aid is widely believed to be an arm of the State Department and is banned in multiple countries, accused of interfering in domestic policies and promoting regime change. It even has an Office of Transition Initiatives. The management at SAMS are also, believe it or not, former USAID staffers. It was SAMS who reportedly provided the OPCW with samples of the alleged sarin gas that was used in Khan Sheikhoun, the site of a chemical attack last year. After which, Donald Trump sent 57 cruise missiles at the Syrian airbase. OPCW is on its way to Douma to investigate. We've contacted various groups, including the World Health Organization. They've cited SAMS, but have refused to go into any details. What comes next, no one can say. Whether the U.S. will go ahead with a preemptive strike or whether cooler heads will prevail.
Let's go live now to Annie Mashon, former MI5 intelligence officer. Hi, Annie. You're taking these details like we are. To what extent could the witness testimony here that's been put forward by Russia's defense ministry change how this perceived chemical attack, these allegations of it, are being viewed? Will it make any difference or not?
Well, there has been a rush in the West to stampede towards trying to escalate the violence in Syria. But one would hope that once the OPCW gets its boots on the ground and starts investigating properly, taking witness statements, taking samples, they may come to a more measured conclusion. What I find really alarming, though, is the hypocrisy of what's going on in the UN at the moment, where the UN American representative, Nikki Haley, has been saying today that the Russians are just being obstructive in this whole investigation. They keep vetoing things, they keep stopping things, they refuse to agree to forms of words. And yet, at the very same time, over the last couple of weeks, we've had these demonstrations in Gaza where the Israelis have been shooting protesters and countries have been trying at the same time in the UN to launch objections, and it's the US that's vetoing all these. So, you know, what's going on between these two sides is hypocritical at best, certainly with the US response.
While we're on the subject, Nikki Haley, today, just a few hours ago, she says the US, the UK and France have all arrived at the same conclusion concerning the alleged attack. In fact, let's listen to her. I'll come straight back.
Did a chemical weapons attack happen? Yes. The US has analyzed, yes, it has happened. The UK has analyzed, yes, it has happened. France has analyzed, yes, it has happened. 3 separate analyses, all coming back with the same thing. There is proof that this happened.
What's she referring to there when she says analysed, considering no British and no American experts actually on the ground there? So what evidence are they analysing?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, one presumes they're trawling through their vast databases of electronic surveillance and might have picked up some chatter or some whispers from who knows who might have been on the ground in Syria. I mean, let's bear in mind as well, I remember seeing this live on international media a few weeks ago, that one of the senior Russian generals actually warned there was going to be a false flag chemical weapons attack in Syria. Now, you know, where is that coming from as well? Presumably the Russians were picking up chatter, but, you know, in the other direction. This is why the OPCW has to be so careful in gathering evidence, in analysing what might have happened, speaking to eyewitnesses as well. Because, you know, we've had other alleged chemical weapons attacks in Syria over the last few years, and the two most notorious in Idlib and the one last year have both been debunked by very serious investigative journalists, not least Seymour Hersh, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning American journalist, and he won the Sam Adams Award last year for it.
A final thought, another twist here as these accusations go backwards and forwards yet another day. Moscow now accusing today the UK of directly orchestrating what it called a provocation. Considering what's going on in Salisbury, etc., and relations of late, what do you make of that claim?
Well, it could obviously just be a tit for tat. We know that. On the other hand, we do know that the UK and the US intelligence agencies have been, should we say, advising the so-called rebels, i.e., you know, Islamic terrorists on the ground in Syria, and giving them logistical support over the last few years, which has prolonged the agony of the Syrian people. So, you know, who knows what's going on? It would be great if every country could have a fair hearing in these sort of investigations, rather than a sort of gang bullying mentality of the major Western countries ganging up together and all, you know, automatically blaming Russia or Iran or Syria or whatever.